Commentary by Urmila Devidasi. Let's see. A lot of the time, Urmila Mataji doesn't give the long commentary. So maybe we will be able to finish today, her. So we can start on the verse number 8. The verse 7, the practitioner on the path of spontaneous devotion has stopped trying to enjoy money, mundane knowledge, possessions, and gross or subtle sex on the plea of bhakti. With great care, such a person swims in the ocean of divine love, holding the jewel of love. But the root of all pride and deceit remains in the heart. The ocean of love, after all, is all around the practitioner, but not within. Bhakti Vinod again lists ways in which this root manifests at this deepest level. What each item on his list has in common is this yearning. Quote, I want others to see how great I am. I'm pure, learned, and detached. I want others to appreciate how I'm swimming in the ocean of spiritual love. I'm a great saintly person. Honor me, glorify me. Unlike the sensation of having a prostitute stealing one's wealth, a tigress eating one's heart, robbers pulling one around with a strong rope around the neck, or burning stinky urine all over oneself. At this point, a person may feel that a party is going on in the heart. There is food, singing, and dancing. This must be spiritual. A person could think. Raghunath Das Goswami tells us to take a closer look in our heart, to smell the food and listen to the song going on there. The dancing in the heart may not be that of a pure ladies of spiritual love, sadhu Brahm. Note the feminine form with the final ah, but someone else entirely. It's a woman, yes, but the wrong kind of. Instead of chaste love, this woman is filled with the impure lust. Her boyfriend, they sit dancing with her, and they are eating a dead dog. With the dog eating dance of desire for distinction going on in our heart, the ladies of love go elsewhere. We may think we want their presence, but they will not stay in such a place. Fame is like a dog meat because it seems like nourishment, but only brings pain and disease. Because fame is so flickering and can turn to nothing or infamy in a moment, those who seek it are filled with fear. People seeking fame must always adjust themselves to appear pleasing to others. Anxiety thus pervades such people's lives as they attempt to constantly modify everything about themselves to ensure a good reputation. The desire for such dog meat is like dancing promiscuous woman. She is promiscuous because the desire for fame is about going to wherever accolades and glorification can be found, rather than loyalty and service. In the same way, prostitute destroy her wealth and body for others' pleasure. The desire for fame destroys our peace and devotion in order to pretend to be what others want us to be. Thus, we invite her boyfriend of deceit and pretentiousness. We wear a variety of masks so everyone will praise what they think we are. Truth, what to speak of this absolute truth, cannot blossom in such a heart. The problem is that this wanton woman has been dancing in our heart for a very long time. It's difficult for us to recognize how much she is hurting us, and almost impossible to dry her out by our own strength. In the fifth verse, we were advised to call for help from the devotees of the killer of Baka, personified hypocrisy. Here we are advised help must come from Prabhu Daita Samantam. In other words, now we need not just any devotee of Krishna, but general in his army. We may ask why top commanders are necessary. Because the dancing dog eater is the desire for our own honor. Her presence makes us envy those who are worthiest of honor. Therefore, to evict her, we take a servant's position to those whom we would otherwise envy. We engage always in the service of such person, sadatvam sevasva, honoring devotee commanders in a practical way. Through serving them, get us free from the desire to receive honor ourselves. We then feel satisfied to be in our own honest position. When the unchaste dancer is thus gone, and the pure ladies of divine love then take up residence in our heart, we can go through the doorway into fully realized spiritual service in our eternal form, starting with verse number 8. So, looking forward to start verse 8. 3 more verses to go. So now we will dwell in the life of Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita. We are on volume number 4, chapter 6, Jet Age Parivrajakacarya. I'll read one paragraph because I think there are a couple of days went by and our memory is not that sharp. Professor Kodowski is saying, quote, "You have told that in any society there are 4 divisions, but it is not so easy to distinguish. For instance, one can group together different social classes and professional groups into 4 divisions in any society. There is no difficulty. The only difficulty is, for instance, in socialist society in our country and other socialist societies. How can you distinguish productive group and workers?" Unquote. So Prabhupada welcomed the professor's question, although grounded in Soviet socialist vested interest. Prabhupada considered the professor not so much an academician as a pawn of the Soviet university system, much as one political power tries to understand its adversary. The professor was inquiring into Indian culture so that his government might penetrate it with their own ideology. Behind Professor Kodowski's apparent interest in Vedic culture, Prabhupada could see the view of the Communist Party, a view diametrically opposed to Vedic philosophy. Nevertheless, Prabhupada tactfully continued to present Krishna consciousness in accord with Parampara. And he tried to convince Professor Kodowski through scripture and logic. Quoting Bhagavad Gita, a Shastra with which the professor was familiar in his own way, Prabhupada described Lord Krishna as the creator of the four divisions of society. Professor Kodowski immediately countered with the theory of the Soviet scholars that the Varnashrama division were a recent addition to Vedic culture. He also again registered his opinion that the divisions of the Varnashrama has no meaning within socialism. So Professor Kodowski again telling in his own word, there is a great distinction between socialist society and all society preceding socialism. Because in modern Western society, you can group all social and professional classes in the particular class division, Brahmanas, Kshatriya, Vaishyas, or factory owners, and Sudras, or menial workers. But here we have no Vaishyas because we have administrative staff in factories, managerial staff. You can call them Kshatriyas and then Sudras, the workers themselves, but not this intermediate class. So Prabhupada is responding as follows. That is stated, Kalo Shudra Shambhavaha. In this age, practically, all men are Shudras. That is stated. But if there are simply Sudras, then the social order will be disturbed. In spite of your state of Sudras, the Brahmanas are there. That is necessary. So if you do not divide the social order in such a way, then it will be chaos. That is the scientific estimation of the Vedas. You may belong to the Sudra class, but to maintain the social order, you have to train some of the Sudras to become Brahmanas. It cannot depend on the Sudras. So Prabhupada gave his standard analogy, comparing the social body to the human body. And all the parts are necessary, not only the legs, but the belly, the arm, and the head. Quote, otherwise, he said, it will not work properly. As long as this is going on, there will be some disturbance. Modern society's missing point, Prabhupada said, was in understanding of the purpose of human life. Quote, they do not know what is the next life, he said. There is no department of knowledge or scientific department to study what is there after finishing this body. I have the one lady, I was flying from Frankfurt to Houston from the Czechoslovakia. And she had the same question. She kept on asking me, who we will be in the next life. Very nice question. It was very interesting conversation and we become friends. Very well. Modern society's missing point, Prabhupada said, was an understanding of the purpose of human life. They do not know what is the next life, he said. There is no department, knowledge or scientific department to study what is there after finishing this body. When Prabhupada visited this MIT, and the professors were proudly showing all the facility, different departments of the MIT study. And finally, they sit down in the conference room, and Prabhupada says, where is the department which teaches the difference between the body and soul? So this is the problem. There was a very strong point that was there in my mind, very prominent when I was chanting, but I think it will not come right now. Hmm. Yeah, the point was when we were reading the pastime that Krishna spent three 3 years and 4 months in Gokul, and then in Sakstat, the where the Nanda Baba in Circle Park all the bullock cart when they wants to move to Nandagaon. They stop at the Delhi Agra Road and Vrindavan Road. That's where that location. And they spent 3 years and 4 months there. And then in Nandagaon, they spent 3 years and 4 months, so almost 10 years. And then when he went to Mathura, he stayed there for 18 years. And that's where Krishna went to his guru school, Sandipani Muni's ashram. So I was thinking that how our culture was, that not to put us into this, speed up this process. A lot of the parents, they took so much proud that their son become graduate at age of 16. But we are killing their happiness. The childish time, Prabhupada used to say that 7 years we should give the child for the growth, let them play. And we see now that I remember I cannot go to the school until I turn to 7. Even if I was short for 2 months, I had to wait for a whole year. So I wasted almost 10 months. Now we see, even 2 years old, we are bombarding with the material education. What a horrible thing we are doing. That was the prominent thought was going on, that how much we are deviating, and then we want to be happy. No wonder why the students are suiciding. So Professor Kodobowski objected politely, completely. Swamiji, he said, when the body dies, the owner also dies. And Prabhupada marked his reply. No, Prabhupada quickly replied, this fact you must know. Why is there no department of knowledge in the university to study this fact scientifically? That is my proposition. That department is lacking. It may be as you say, it may be as I say, but there must be a department of knowledge. Now, recently a cardiologist, a doctor in Montreal and Toronto, has accepted that there is a soul. I had some correspondence with him, and he strongly believes that there is a soul. Unquote. So Prabhupada continued to build his argument. Quote, we accept knowledge from authority. The professor countered that everything had to be accepted on the basis of empirical evidence. But then, in mid-sentence, he stopped arguing and inquired, quote, Have you many branches of your society in the world? Prabhupada began speaking about ISKCON with its 65 branches all around the world, and of how he was going next to Paris, where his disciple had recently acquired a new center, and of how the American boys and girls, especially, were joining his movement. He told of the four prohibitive rules: no meat eating, no illicit sex, no intoxication, and no gambling, and of the books he had published. As Prabhupada described the workings of his movement, Professor Korowski nodded approvingly. When Prabhupada returned to comparing Krishna consciousness to communism, he concluded that the two philosophies were in agreement, and both stress surrender to an authority. The devotee surrendered to Krishna, the communist to Lenin. Prabhupada, our life is by surrender, is it not? Do you disagree with this point? Professor, to some extent you surrender. Prabhupada responded, yes, to the full extent. Prabhupada didn't defeat that not up to some, he said yes, but then he corrected to the full extent. So, Professor, you have to surrender to the society. For instance, the whole people. Prabhupada, yes, to the whole people, or to the state, or king, or government, or whatever you say. The surrender must be there. It may be different. Professor Korowskis, the only difficulty is we cannot have surrender to government or to a king. The principal difference is of surrender to a king who is a single person or to the whole society. Prabhupada, no, that is a change of color only. But the surrender is there. The principle of surrender is there. Whether you surrender to monarchy, democracy, aristocracy, or dictatorship, you have to surrender. That is a fact. Without surrender, there is no life. It is not possible. So we are educating person to surrender to the Supreme, wherefrom you get all protection. Just like Krishna says, Sarva Dharmam Parityaja. So surrender is there. No one can say, no, I'm not surrendered to anyone. The difference is where he surrenders. And the ultimate surrendering object is Krishna. Therefore, in Bhagavad Gita, it is said, Bahunam Janmanam Ante Jnanvam Mam Prapadyate. After surrendering to so many things, birth after birth, when one is factually wise, he surrendered unto me. Unquote. So Professor Kotovsky finally agreed. But surrender had to be accompanied by revolution, he said. The French Revolution, for example, was a revolt against one kind of surrender. And yet, the revolution itself was another surrender to the people. Quote. So it is not enough to come full stop, unquote, the professor argued. Quote, surrender is to be accompanied with revolt against surrender to other people, unquote. The response Prabhupada gave is yes. The surrender will be full stop when is surrender to Krishna. That is a full stop, no more surrender. Other surrender you have to change by revolution. But when you come to Krishna, then it is sufficient. You are satisfied. Just like I give you one example. A child is crying and people change laps. Oh, it has not stopped. But as soon as the baby comes to the lap of its mother, professor said, stop. So Prabhupada said, yes, full satisfaction. So this surrender, the changes will go on in different categories. The sum total of all this surrender is surrender to Maya, material illusion. But the final surrender is to Krishna, and then you will be happy. After only 3 days, Prabhupada's mission in Moscow seemed finished. The meeting with Professor Korovsky over, what was left? The government would allow nothing else. He had not allowed him to bring in books, and now he had been refused the opportunity to speak publicly. Foreigners were not to talk with the Russians. He could go nowhere unless on an accompanied tour. So, with no preaching and no prospects, he stayed in his cramped room, taking his massage, bathing, accepting whatever food Shyam Sundar could gather and cook, dictating a few letters, chanting Hare Krishna, and translating Srimad Bhagavatam. So Prabhupada took a guided tour of Moscow, riding with other tourists on a crowded bus. He saw elderly Russians going to church, armed guards stationed at the door. He soon tired of the tour, however, and the tour guide got him a taxi and instructed the driver to return him to the Hotel National. So Shyam Sundar continued to spend most of his day looking for fresh food. Hearing that oranges were available at a certain market across town, he set out across the city. With his shaved head and his white dhoti and kurta, he drew stares from everyone. He passed, and as he was returning after dark, ununiformed men wearing red armbands accosted him, taking him to be a local deviant. Grabbing him, they pinned his arm behind his back and shouted at him in Russian. Shyam Sundar caught the word document, document, passport. He replied, document, hotel, hotel. Realizing Shyam Sundar was a tourist, the officers released him, and he returned to the hotel and informed Prabhupada of what had taken place. But there is no hope in Russia without Krishna consciousness, Prabhupada said. Once Shyam Sundar was standing in line at the yogurt store when a man behind him asked him about yoga. Quote, I really want to talk with you, unquote, the man said. And he gave Shyam Sundar his name and address, and a time they could safely meet. When Shyam Sundar told Prabhupada, Prabhupada says, quote, no, he is a policeman, don't go, unquote. Standing at his window, Prabhupada glimpsed a parade nearby, Red Square. Troops, tanks, artillery, and missiles parading through the streets. By always preparing for war, Prabhupada said, the Russian leaders kept the globe motivated, and these avoided a revolt. He compared warlike Russia to the Asuras, demons in the ancient Vedic histories like Srimad Bhagavatam. One day, two young men, one of the son of an Indian diplomat stationed in Moscow, the other a young Muscovite, were loitering near Red Square when they saw an amazing sight. Out of the usual regimented routine of city traffic, a tall young man with a shaved head, a long reddish ponytail, and flowing white robes approached. It was Shyamsundar. Familiar with Shyamsundar's dress, the son of the Indian diplomat stopped him. Shyamsundar smiled, quote, Hare Krishna, brother, unquote. And he began talking with the Indian, whose name was Narayan. The Russian even knew a little English and followed the conversation as closely as he could. The talk grew serious. Quote, Why don't you come up and meet my spiritual master? Unquote, Shyamsundar asked. Honored, the boys immediately accompanied Shyamsundar to the Hotel National. When they arrived, they found Prabhupada seated on his bed, aglow and smiling. Arvinda massaging his feet. Shyamsundar entered, offering obeisances before Prabhupada, and Ivan was completely fascinated. Quote, Come on, unquote, Prabhupada said. And the three of them sat at Prabhupada's feet. Turning first to Narayan, Prabhupada asked his name and his father's occupation. Prabhupada is so smart, right? Narayan liked Prabhupada and offered to bring him green vegetables. His father, being highly placed at the Indian embassy, had produced phone in from India. Ivan was interested even more than his Indian friend, and Prabhupada began explaining to him the philosophy of Krishna consciousness, while Narayan helped by translating. Ivan inquired with respect and awe, and Prabhupada answered his questions, teaching as much basic information about Krishna consciousness as was possible in one sitting. Prabhupada explained the difference between the spirit soul and the body and described the soul's eternal relationship with Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He spoke of Bhagavad Gita, of his network of temples around the world, and of his young men and women disciples, all practicing Bhakti Yoga. So Prabhupada mentioned his desire to preach in Russia, which was a great field for Krishna consciousness because the people were open-minded and hadn't been polluted by sense gratification. He wanted to introduce Krishna consciousness literature in Russia through a library or a reading room or in whatever way possible. Krishna conscious philosophy, he said, should be taught to Russia's most intelligent people. But because of the government restriction, it would have to be done discreetly. Devotees would not be able to sing and dance in the street, but they could chant quietly together in someone's home. Prabhupada then began singing very quietly, leading the boys in Kirtan. Oh, I went over 1 minute, huh? Sorry. We should be punctual in our service. So we will end our session here, and before the devotees leave, we would like to offer our humble obeisances by reciting the prayer. Vancha kalpatarubhasya kripasindhu bhaivacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaः.